The courtroom fell silent as the homeless woman stood before the judge, her worn military jacket barely hiding the dirt-stained clothes beneath. She'd been caught sleeping in a doorway downtown. But when the judge read her name aloud, his hand froze midair. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell. The same name he'd seen on a medal citation 20 years ago. The same name that had saved his son's life in Kandahar. What city are you watching from today? If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe and follow for more stories about extraordinary people. It was a cold Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle when Officer James Rodriguez found her, curled up in the recessed doorway of an abandoned storefront, covered by a thin blanket and a faded navy jacket that had seen better days. This wasn't his first interaction with the homeless population on his beat, but something about this woman was different. Despite the weathered face and tired eyes, she held herself with a certain dignity, a straightness in her posture, even as she slept. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you can't stay here," Rodriguez said gently. Crouching down to her level. Sarah Mitchell opened her eyes slowly, not startled, as if she'd sensed his approach. "I understand, officer. I'll move along." Her voice was clear, educated. Rodriguez noticed her hands, callous but careful as she folded her blanket with military precision. The jacket bore a sealed trident pin, tarnished but unmistakable. "Were you actually a SEAL?" he asked, unable to hide his surprise. Sarah looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Lieutenant Commander. 12 years of service. Seems like another lifetime now." Rodriguez wanted to ask more, wanted to understand how someone who'd served at such a high level ended up on the streets. But the store owner was already calling in a complaint. He had no choice but to write her a citation for illegal camping. It was her third violation in 2 months. This time, she'd have to appear in court. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in Judge William Harrison's courtroom. She'd done her best to clean up, washing in a public restroom, combing her gray-streaked hair with her fingers. The jacket was buttoned, hiding the worn shirt beneath. Around her, the courtroom buzzed with the usual chaos of municipal court. Lawyers shuffled papers, defendants whispered nervously, and the bailiff called out names in a monotone voice. "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell," the clerk announced. Judge Harrison looked up from his paperwork, reading through the citation. "Illegal camping. Third offense." He'd seen hundreds of these cases. But then he saw it. The prior address listed was a VA hospital. His eyes moved to the defendant. The woman standing before him was thin, probably in her late 40s, with the kind of weariness that comes from carrying invisible burdens. "Ms. Mitchell," he began, his voice professional, but not unkind. "It says here, this is your third violation. Do you understand that continued offenses could result in jail time?" "Yes, Your Honor," Sarah replied, her voice steady. That voice. Harrison paused. There was something familiar about her bearing, the way she stood at attention without even realizing it. He looked back at the file. Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. His eyes widened slightly. He pulled up something on his computer, typing quickly. Then he sat back in his chair, his professional composure cracking just slightly. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell?" he asked quietly. The courtroom noise seemed to fade. Sarah's eyes met his, confused. "Yes, Your Honor. Retired." Harrison leaned forward. "Were you deployed to Kandahar province in 2004? Part of a joint task force operation?" Sarah's posture stiffened, memories flooding back. "I was, Your Honor." The judge's voice grew softer, almost reverent. "Operation Silent Guardian. August 15, 2004. Sarah's breath caught. She hadn't heard that operation name spoken aloud in years. She nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. Judge Harrison stood, which was unusual enough that even the chattering lawyers fell silent. "Lieutenant Commander, you pulled 6 men out of an ambush that day. One of them was Marine Lieutenant Michael Harrison. My son." The courtroom went completely still. Sarah's eyes glistened. She remembered that day, the smoke, the chaos, the young Marine who'd taken shrapnel to his leg. She remembered carrying him through enemy fire to the extraction point, her team providing cover. She'd done her job. She'd never thought about it again, or tried not to. My son came home because of you, Harrison continued, his voice thick with emotion. He's a teacher now. Has 2 daughters. They exist because you risked everything to bring him back. He paused, looking at the woman before him. The hero who'd saved his son, now standing before him charged with the crime of having nowhere to sleep. What happened? He asked gently, the judge momentarily replaced by a grateful father. Sarah's walls, built so carefully over years of surviving on the streets, began to crack. PTSD, Your Honor. After my 4th deployment, I couldn't adjust. The nightmares, the hypervigilance. I pushed everyone away. Lost my marriage. Couldn't hold down a job. The VA helped for a while, but I fell through the cracks. Started drinking to quiet the noise in my head. Eventually, there was nothing left. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks, and she didn't wipe them away. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I know that's not an excuse. Harrison shook his head. You have nothing to apologize for, Commander. Not to me. Not to this court. Not to anyone. What happened next became local legend. Judge Harrison didn't just dismiss the charges. He made phone calls from the bench. Within an hour, he connected Sarah with a specialized veterans program, a trauma counselor who worked specifically with former special operations personnel, and a transitional housing program with an immediate opening. But he did something else too. He shared Sarah's story, with her permission, with the local media. Within a week, a GoFundMe campaign raised over $200,000. Fellow SEALs from around the country reached out. Job offers came in. But more importantly, Sarah finally had what she'd been missing. A community that understood, that didn't judge, that wanted to help carry the burden she'd been carrying alone. 6 months later, Sarah returned to that courtroom. But this time, she was clean, healthy, and employed as a veterans advocate. She'd found her new mission, helping other warriors who'd lost their way find their path home. Judge Harrison smiled as she approached the bench. How are you doing, Commander? One day at a time, Your Honor, Sarah replied. But I'm doing it with support now. I'm not alone anymore. Sarah's story reminds us that heroes don't stop being heroes when they take off the uniform. Sometimes the battles fought after coming home are the hardest ones of all. It reminds us to look deeper, to see the person behind the struggle, and to remember that everyone we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. And it shows us that sometimes a moment of recognition, of seeing someone's true worth, can be the beginning of healing. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever had a moment where someone saw your true worth when you couldn't see it yourself? Share your story in the comments below. And subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more narratives that remind us of our shared humanity and the healing power of compassion. Until next time, remember, every soul has a story worth hearing.